The butcher of love. I took my daughter to play on the slide. And a boy ran over and asked me, "Uncle, can you give me your daughter?" Children speak without restraint. And I smiled and answered him, "She is my lifeblood. Of course I can't give her to you easily." The boy asked me again, "If she died, would you feel very sad?" I suddenly became alert. I have never seen this child before. This children's playground was built with donations from nearby merchants. And I basically know all the children who come to play. I suspected that this boy might be an accomplice of human traffickers. So I took my daughter away. After returning, I told her not to go to the children's playground recently. And not to get close to that boy. Eat the snacks he gave or go with him. My daughter nodded. A few days later, my daughter suddenly told me that she found the boy leading the daughter of the owner of the bakery opposite to where she didn't know where to go. She wanted to follow them. But she didn't dare to follow after thinking of what I said. The bakery was opened by a divorced mother and daughter. The mother's name was Hannah. And her daughter Kiki was only 4 years old this year. The neighbors knew that it was not easy for a woman to raise a child. So they always took good care of her. I called Hannah immediately. But she seemed to be out delivering cakes. And no one answered the phone. About an hour and a half later, Hannah rushed into my store like crazy, grabbed my daughter and asked, "Where did Kiki go? Tell me quickly." My daughter was so scared that she was incoherent. I asked Hannah to call the police and then go with her to look for her. But the clues were cut off as soon as we crossed the road. The police were very helpful. Based on my description, and the nearby surveillance footage, they found the boy that night. His name was Leo. Leo insisted that he had not kidnapped Kiki. And his parents also helped him lie, saying that their son had been at home. The police took out the surveillance to expose their. I am not yet 12 years old. So I shouldn't have to go to jail, right? Leo led us to a nearby unfinished building and pointed to a small pit on the ground. "She is there." The police created a floating one. They opened the lid and found Xiaozhang, with fear written all over his big eyes. Hannah collapsed on the spot. She rushed over to hurt Leo. But the police stopped her. The police asked Leo to recount the entire crime process. His thoughts were very clear, which made my back cold. Leo said that he was at the construction site and had the idea of going west. At first, he wanted to bury the wildcat alive. But the wildcat ran out immediately and he failed. So Leo changed the target of burying alive to children. But the pit was too small. So Leo tied two shoelaces together to measure the size of the pit. When he met a suitable target, he would first measure it with the shoelaces and then implement it. He also said that when selecting targets, he only chose little girls. On the one hand, little girls are not easy to resist. And on the other hand, girls' bodies are softer and easier to fold. "Did you kill her first and then bury her?" Leo shook his head. "I let her lie in by herself." He set up a scam. First, he brought 2 large cardboard boxes, let Kiki lie in them, and then gave her chocolate to eat, so that Cookie mistakenly thought that he was playing a game. Later, he let Cookie get into the foam cardboard box he put in the pit. Kiki didn't have any. After she lay in the soil, Leo said that during this process, Kiki sounded piercing. And then, the hall kicked the board a few times. And Kiki didn't move. Hannah fainted before she could hear the whole story. The police sent her to the hospital for treatment. I heard several old policemen say, "Damn it. I've been a policeman for so many years and have never seen such a beast. If his parents weren't here, I really want to beat him to death." After Kiki's experience spread, neighbors came to ask for Leo's address, saying that they wanted to vent their anger for the Han family mother and daughter. However, the privacy of juvenile criminals is protected by law. The police asked me not to disclose any personal information. Otherwise I would be held jointly liable. A few days later, Hannah suddenly came to my store and cried, saying that the police were going to withdraw the case. The reason was that Leo was under the age of 12 and had no criminal responsibility. The police could only withdraw the case according to the criminal provisions. I was stunned. Leo was clearly in prison. Don't be in prison. What's the reason? The police said that even if I sue Leo's parents for compensation, who can compensate me for my daughter's justice? Hannah cried with blood in the corners of her eyes. What's worse is that Leo's parents don't even want to apologize. They don't even answer Hannah's calls now, even when communicating with the police. They just say they are busy and don't have time to deal with her. My wife couldn't bear it. So she made some soup for Hannah. We are all mothers. Some tragedies have happened and no one can do anything. You are still young. Find a partner and have another child. Just treat it as Kiki's reincarnation. Hannah's voice was hoarse. I can't get over this. When I close my eyes now, it's as if I hear the child crying in front of me, saying that she died with her eyes open. My heart is as painful as being stabbed 17 or 18 times. We are all parents. We empathize with Hannah's experience. So we persuaded her to take the child's body back first, handle the funeral, and then think about the lawsuit. The funeral hall was set up in Hannah's bakery, and all the streets were covered with blood. The shop was here, but everyone kept talking about the same old things. Hannah was tired of crying and numb. During the funeral, Rick, who was selling roast duck, said that it was Hannah's fault for not worrying about Kichi. As a result, several women attacked him. You men try to take care of the children for a day. Don't you eat if you watch the children for 24 hours? Tommy, who was selling meat, smoked viciously. If this happened to me, I would skin that little beast Steven if I went to jail. It's a pity that Hannah is such a good woman, but there is no man to help her vent her anger. Hannah didn't have many relatives, so my wife and I helped to take care of her when we were too busy. My daughter was playing alone at the door. I called her over and told her not to run around. My daughter nodded without saying a word. I was a little puzzled. This little girl usually had a few words. Why was she so well behaved today? My daughter smiled and opened her mouth, revealing the chocolate on her teeth. Because she had serious tooth decay, we all forbade her to eat sweets. Did Auntie Han give it to you? My daughter shook her head. My brother gave it to me. Which brother? It was the brother who took Kiki away. He said that Cookie didn't finish eating these chocolates, so he gave them to me. For I was so scared that I broke out in a cold sweat. I quickly handed my daughter to my wife and asked her to keep an eye on the child and never leave her alone for a second. I searched around with a few people, but didn't find any trace of Leo. It seemed that he had escaped. The more I thought about it, the more scared I became. What if Leo took my daughter away directly and buried her in a small pit? I absolutely couldn't allow such a thing to happen. At night, I secretly told Hannah that Leo came to find my daughter. Hannah's eyes were wide open and she grabbed my arm. Tell me earlier next time. I'll kill him. I looked at the black and white photo of Kiki with a tiger-toothed smile, and made a decision in my heart. Do you really want revenge? I have a way, and I can save you from going to jail. Hannah agreed without any hesitation. So, I let my daughter play as usual every day, but I was actually observing carefully in the dark, looking for Leo's whereabouts. Hannah and I took turns back and forth, and persisted for almost a month. I finally found Leo, who was sneaky and tired, appeared near the children's playground. I called my daughter and asked her to go home now, and Leo followed her. I drove a van behind Leo and kidnapped him on a road without surveillance. I took Leo to Hannah's warehouse. Hannah took Kiki's photo and lit a stick of incense. Kichi, good boy. Mom will let you rest in peace today. Leo cried and struggled. Uncle, Aunt, I'm a child. How can you bear to hurt a child? Hannah didn't hesitate at all, grabbed Leo and stuffed him into the donut-eating machine. Leo weighs about 50 kilograms, and the maximum capacity of the donut-eating machine is 65 kilograms. Having said that, it is impossible to completely stuff a person in. One of Leo's legs was stuck outside. Hannah took a big wooden mallet and smashed it against Leo's joints, breaking Leo's leg and stuffing it in. To be honest, I didn't know how Hannah was going to deal with Leo. The original agreement was that I would kidnap Leo and she would avenge Kruti. Hannah turned on the switch, and the rotating mixing arm just took off a large piece of meat from Leo. Leo began to scream, "I will never kill anyone again. I must be a good child. Uncle, Aunt, please forgive me." I couldn't help but stop the machine. "Don't do this. Just give him a quick death." Hannah stared with red eyes and slapped something in front of me. It was a brand new shoelace, two of which were connected together, just about the same height as my daughter. I had to step aside and let Hannah turn the machine to the maximum. Leo's screams were gradually drowned out by the roar of the machine. Half an hour later, we sent a pot of things that could no longer be called corpses into Hannah's bread oven. Hannah threw some dough in to cover up the smell of burnt corpse oil. It was her time to make bread, so no one would suspect anything even if there was a lot of smoke. After burning Leo's body, Hannah cleaned the bone residue in the furnace and put bread bought from other places in the store. I handed the prepared confession and statement to Hannah. "The next step is the real battle. The police will definitely question you nonstop. Are you ready?" Hannah's tone was terrifyingly calm. "Don't worry. I will never pay for the life of a beast." The day after Leo disappeared, the police came to Hannah's store, and there were 5 or 6 of them at once. I immediately notified the neighbors to come and support Hannah. Everyone felt very sorry for Hannah. Dozens of people came at once, and the police were a little scared. "What are you doing? Assaulting a police officer is a felony." Tommy shouted, "Boss, we don't want to cause trouble. We just want to ask. What do you mean by investigating the victim instead of arresting the murderer?" An old policeman with 2 stripes and 2 flowers on his shoulders stood up. "I understand everyone's feelings, but the police's withdrawal of the case is strictly carried out in accordance with legal procedures. We have to follow the rules. Right?" Rick was dissatisfied. "Last time an old man fell in front of my door and insisted on extorting 20 yuan from me. In the end, the police said that the old man was a vulnerable group and asked me to pay 15 yuan. Why don't we follow the rules then?" The old policeman was speechless, and everyone was furious. "Hannah, don't make a scene. Who is right? We accompany you to the police station every day." Finally, it was Hannah who took the initiative to calm everyone down. "Thank you for your care for me. But Kiki's murder was not the police's fault. On the contrary, they found the murderer very quickly. I am very grateful to them. Everyone, go away and don't interfere with the police's investigation." Hannah performed very well. I told her to establish a positive image of actively cooperating with the investigation in the minds of the police. The police are also human beings. They will put their own emotions into the process of handling the case. If they sympathize with Hannah, they will not get to the bottom of it, and Hannah will be able to pass smoothly. The old policeman wiped his sweat. "Such a big show. It seems that you are quite popular." Hannah smiled bitterly while making tea. "We who run small businesses are different from you. The leader. No one pays us wages, and no one cares about us when something happens. So we help each other. What's the value of your coming today?" She poured it for the old policeman. The old policeman said gratefully, "Oh, I was also at the scene when we were looking for Kiki. We are here today because of Leo. Yesterday, we received a report from his parents that their son was missing. Considering the dispute between you, the police now suspect that you may be related to the case. But don't get excited. This is just a routine procedure, and does not mean that you are a suspect." I realized that Owen was lying. If it was handled as a missing case, there would be no need for so many police officers. They just suspected that Hannah killed Leo, and they came here today to search for evidence. However, this did not bother Hannah. We have done a lot of rehearsals on how to deal with police interrogation. But Hannah's operation surprised me. She put her wrist on the table. "Yes, I killed the person. You can take me away." Owen and I both showed surprised expressions. "Miss Emma, you are legally responsible for every word you say now. Do you really admit that you murdered Leo?" "Yes. I admit that I am the murderer. Please tell me, if I can't kill the murderer who killed my daughter, then what is the point of me living? Hannah began to choke up. Owen was a little at a loss, and quickly asked the accompanying female police officer to calm Hannah down. In addition to being surprised, I secretly admired Hannah's cleverness. Her answer was better than I thought. Criminal investigation is a professional subject, which has a lot of psychology, biology and mathematics, backed by more than 100 years of experience in handling cases. To be honest, it is basically impossible to deceive the police during the interrogation, especially the experienced police, who can catch the suspect's lies from very subtle details. My original strategy was to let Hannah keep silent as much as possible, but Hannah took the initiative, which was equivalent to throwing the problem back to the police. I tell you the truth. It's up to you to believe it or not. Owen obviously didn't take Hannah's words seriously. He thought Hannah was just venting, and this level was passed without any danger. He took out a notebook and began to ask Hannah what she did at any time. Sorting out the timeline, the police were able to calculate the exact time of Leo's disappearance based on surveillance. But it was useless because I was the one who kidnapped Leo, and Hannah had been in the store, and many customers could testify. As long as the police did not lean towards the accomplice, Hannah's alibi would be as solid as a mountain. Owen also came to the same conclusion. That is, Hannah did not have the conditions to commit the crime. He took a pair of medical rubber gloves and said, "Ms. Hahn, if you don't mind, we will just take a look in your store. Don't worry. We won't touch anything." The police immediately took action. They took a dozen evidence bags and put Hannah's rolling pin, bread knife, and even butter knife, which could be used as weapons, into them. One policeman carefully checked the warehouse, wardrobe, refrigerator, and other places, and the other policeman took a transparent tape and stuck it back and forth on the ground to extract hair and fingerprints. Another policeman took a stick to knock on the wall, and lifted the ceiling to confirm that there were no dead corners in the store where things could be hidden. Owen was particularly interested in the oven in the store. He said that he was from Xinjiang and had a similar oven at home. It was usually used to make naan and steamed buns, but it was much smaller. By the way, what is the highest temperature of this oven? About 500 degrees. When I use it, it can only burn to 300 degrees. Fang nodded absently. I asked him to calculate whether this oven can be used as a tool for cremation. The decomposition temperature of human bones is 600 to 800 degrees. If it does not reach this temperature, it will only burn a pile of carbonized skeletons, which is very troublesome to deal with. But I made a tool to temporarily raise the flue of the oven, successfully raising the furnace temperature to more than 800 degrees, so that Leo's body can be disposed of. After the search, the police returned the items in the store to their original places. Owen asked Hannah, "Besides this store, do you have any other stores, warehouses or houses that you rent or buy?" Hannah shook her head. "No. We usually live on the second floor, because we have to get up at 3 o'clock to make bread. And Cheeky always complains that she can't sleep in." She started crying before she finished speaking. Owen sighed and patted Hannah on the shoulder. "Don't worry. We will clear your name as soon as possible." A few days later, the police returned the items they took from Hannah's store intact, which means they did not find any suspicious points. I breathed a sigh of relief. This process was more tormenting than I thought. I haven't slept well for several days. My mind was full of images of myself being imprisoned. The police did not file a criminal case, which is our victory. Without a criminal case, there would be no detention, and there would be no so-called big memory recovery technique. As long as Hannah is cleared of suspicion, the police will then focus on the direction of running away from home. There are so many missing children in the country, and Leo is not special enough to require the police to search everywhere. As for Leo's parents, they will not get to the bottom of it. I heard that they each had an affair and ignored their son. Since Leo's grandmother died, this pair of extreme parents gave their son $20 every day to let him fend for himself. After Leo killed someone, they were too lazy to go home and wanted to push the child to each other. Chiki's tragedy is inseparable from this pair of negligent parents. Unfortunately, the law cannot punish them. A few days later, a special customer, Owen, suddenly came to my store. When I found him, he was chatting with my wife. I quickly took a dish and walked over. "Boss, what brings you here?" Owen smiled. "You don't have to be polite. I just happened to be hungry, so I came in to eat a bowl of noodles. Oh, by the way, I heard from your wife that you are a talented student who graduated from a 985 university. It's a waste for a talent like you to open a noodle shop, right?" I smiled and said, "I just don't want to spend more time with my children. Besides, even if the customers are picky, they won't call me in the middle of the night to scold me." Owen pulled me to sit down and chat. He didn't have a point in his words at all, as if he really just came to eat a bowl of noodles. I decided to find out his background. "Boss, I see you have 2 bars and 2 flowers. Which means you are a regular official, right? Why don't you sit in the office but run around outside?" "Hey, don't mention it. I'm not suitable for politics. I just like to squat on the scene and study some case details." I thought to myself, if Owen started from the grassroots and worked his way up to his current position by solving cases, that means he has probably handled more than hundreds of cases. And there are basically no unsolved cases. In other words, Wu Zhang is a true super detective. I swallowed my saliva. It would be suicidal to compete with such a person. I decided to find a reason to leave quickly. Owen suddenly took out a surveillance photo. The person in the picture was Leo. The leader thinks that Leo may have run away from home and is going to treat this case as a missing person. But I disagree. He took a picture of the photo. Leo's behavior is not normal. He is obviously hiding his whereabouts. I think he is following someone. He took out another photo. Bun, white sweater, blue overalls. "I remember you seem to have a daughter? About the same age as Kiki?" My heart began to beat wildly. 9 In the process of investigating a case, the most important clue for the police is the motive. Murder requires a strong motive. I originally planned that if the police did not know that I had a motive, then I could cover for Hannah and let her clear her suspicion through an alibi. But I didn't expect that Owen would discover my motive so quickly and infer that I was Hannah's accomplice, making Hannah's alibi fall apart. If Owen reopens the investigation, then this time Hannah and I will become suspects, and the police's search will be unprecedented, and everything will be over. I was sweating profusely. My palms were cold, and the world around me was spinning. Owen smiled and said to me, "Let me make it clear in advance that I am not here to investigate the case today. I don't have any recording or wiretapping equipment on me, so you can rest assured." To be honest, I sympathize with Hannah and fully understand the difficulties you have in doing this. I have some connections in the political and legal system. If you surrender, I will actively fight for a reduction in your sentence. I couldn't help but ask, "How much can it be reduced?" Owen's smile deepened. "For you, the crime of kidnapping will be sentenced to more than 5 years. And if it causes death, it will start at 15 years. But as long as you deny that you didn't know about Hannah's revenge plan, I can help you get 5 years. As for Hannah, the court will take into account that she lost her beloved daughter and has been in a state of depression for a long time, and the sentence should be reduced to 17 or 18 years. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Leo murdered Kuchi, but he didn't have to spend a day in jail. But the price Hannah paid was her most precious years. Isn't the essence of law fair? I gradually calmed down and looked into Owen's eyes. "Thank you for your reminder. I will definitely protect my daughter from harm at all costs." I deliberately emphasized the last 4 words, and the smile on Owen's face disappeared. I have been a police officer for so many years, and I have never seen a case that can be done without any loopholes. Do you want to reconsider it? I have thought about it, and I will definitely stand on the side of justice. How can killing a child be considered justice? Your moral standards are too low. Right? Murder is certainly not considered justice. But if the law cannot protect me, then I will use all means to defend myself. I think this is justice. Owen seemed to think that it was useless to say more, and sighed. Then let's see you later. 10. It is too early to admit defeat now. To put it bluntly, motive alone is not enough. Owen also needs evidence. Criminal case filing requires a complete chain of evidence. Owen needs to find at least one of the three: the murder weapon, the body, and the crime scene. As long as he can't find any of them, it will be our victory. Owen did restart the investigation, and more than a dozen police officers turned Hannah's store upside down. They did not miss every corner of the floor. First taped it, then sprayed lume in all reagent, tested the fluorescent reaction, and even checked the ceiling. 2 policemen pulled a yellow cordon outside, stating that any behavior that broke into the cordon would be regarded as provoking trouble. And the neighbors could only stare blankly. Owen did not search my store. He seemed to be sure that Hannah must have killed Leo. So he spent almost all his energy on Hannah. During the search, Owen kept observing Hannah carefully. She seemed absent-minded, holding a piece of dry bread in her hand, breaking it and eating it. At this time, a young police officer reported to Owen, "Leader, after our search, we have not found any traces related to the case in the store, nor any tools that can be used as murder weapons." Owen shook his head. To kill a half-grown child, it is enough to use your hands. And you don't have to use a murder weapon. You just need to find the body and the traces of the crime. He asked again, "Have you checked the oven? Have you tested the oven temperature?" "I have tested it. And the highest temperature can only be more than 500 degrees. Owen walked around the bakery and pointed at the bacon and said, "It is not impossible to increase the temperature of this kind of oven as long as it is modified. Take down the chimney and carefully check if there is any hair in the gap." The police immediately did as they were told. They took down the chimney, disassembled the insulation iron sheet, and even pulled out the glass wool inside for careful inspection. But the chimney was very clean, just like a brand new one. Owen put on gloves and walked into the store. He carefully looked at the equipment in the store, and his eyes finally fell on the dough-kneading machine. With a click, the bread in Hannah's hand broke into two halves. Owen captured this moment, and he immediately checked the dough-kneading machine carefully. Finally, he found that the mixer of the dough-kneading machine was new, and the lubricating oil on it had not solidified. He immediately disassembled the mixer for lume in all tests, but there was no fluorescent reaction on it. Owen was obviously disappointed. He asked the police to push the dough-kneading machine away and take it to the identification center for microbial culture to extract Leo's DNA. A few days later, the results came out. There was nothing on it. 11. Owen was really amazing. He roughly deduced our methods of killing and disposing of corpses just by observation. But what he didn't know was that the evidence was actually hidden under his nose. 12. Owen returned with nothing. The neighbors united to hold a rally in front of the Public Security Bureau, demanding that the police stop harassing Hannah. This incident even became a hot search. In the end, Hannah took the initiative to calm the situation and asked the police for compensation. She did not make too much demands, but only asked for sanitation fees and lost wages. I knew Owen would never give up, but he couldn't mobilize police resources in a short time. The upper level had already decided to treat Leo's case as a missing person. I breathed a sigh of relief. But it wasn't over yet. After the police announced that Hannah was no longer suspected, Leo's parents still firmly regarded her as the murderer and harassed her many times. This is no wonder. Although they took almost no care of their son, Leo was their own flesh and blood after all. After the neighbors found out, they blocked the couple in Hannah's store and beat them up. So they didn't dare to show up easily. But Hannah's store was often thrown with stones and bricks in the middle of the night, and the window was smashed several times. You can guess with your toes that it was the work of this extreme parents. I suggested that Hannah call the police, but she didn't want to alert the police. On the other hand, Hannah's mental state was getting worse and worse. She actually ate the last 2 loaves of bread. She left the last 2 loaves of bread to Leo's parents and tricked them into eating them. This is a mother's revenge.